Welcome to the Harmonic Spark podcast, where we ignite important conversations about spiritual intelligence. In these forward-thinking conversations, we explore topics like artificial intelligence, or more fittingly, frontier intelligence, and how to use it expansively in our lives, ways to grow our capabilities as paradigm shifters, and how to live our lives creatively with integrity and fearlessness. We blend spirituality, science, and entrepreneurship in our conversations that will ignite your harmonic spark. Today we have with us Reese SanAgustin-Turner, Christina Thompson, Becky Prater, and I am Ann Dawson. And today we have a very interesting topic. We are discussing the love languages. So I don't know about you ladies, but I did read a book on this years ago. And admittedly, I did have to refresh myself what which the five were. And I know in relationships, it's kind of fun to take an online quiz. I've done that a couple of times through some of my exes and like, oh, what are your love languages? And I think it's interesting that mine have actually changed a little bit. And I think it's good to continue to retest yourself. I might be getting a little ahead of myself. So let me throw it back to one of you ladies if you want to discuss what exactly are the five love languages and what do they mean?
I'll do that. So the Five Love Language book was written by Gary Chapman a while back, I don't know, years ago, like you said, that's when I read it. And the languages are words of affirmation, acts of service, receiving gifts, quality time, and physical touch or affection. And so those are the five. And why I was thinking this would be interesting to talk about is because I have some new ones. I have some other ones that I think we should add. And when I read that book, I thought, oh, people understand love, receive love, and give love in a different way. And because I wanted specifically for my kids to be sure they knew that I love them, I decided to use all the love languages to communicate love to my kids deliberately. Because I thought, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that people receive love through gifts. I didn't realize people receive love through words of affirmation. I didn't know that. And so I thought, okay, I will make sure I use words. I will make sure that I give, thoughtful gifts. I will make sure I spend time. And I feel like that was a big shift for me in my life. So rather than thinking, here's the one that works for me, I decided, oh my gosh, we have an opportunity to show love in all these ways.
That's really beautiful, and I admire that you deliberately and mindfully practice all those with your children. And I think that it's important, at least for me, to have a little bit of all of those things. And I don't really feel like one tops all of the others, because I feel like if I were, I'd be pigeonholing myself. Like, yeah, I've dated guys that are like, okay, you're good with words of affirmation, but if there's nothing else included, like, I feel that's not really for me. So I think having a blend of those things is really important.
What would you say, what do you guys think yours are when you think about that? How do you first recognize love?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
It kind of comes from like what your parents did. How did your parents show you love?
I think my mom was really great at acts of service and would really go out of her way to make all of our lunches or like cooking dinner all of the time, picking us up from cheerleading practice, taking us to school. So I think my mom was really an acts of service person and also words of affirmation. So I think those are also my top two, actually, if I have to say, because it's like one thing to say you're going to do something, but a completely different thing if you actually go and do the thing. Right? Yeah. Following up with what you talk about. So I'd say my mom definitely practiced those, and I think that's how that's rubbed off on me in some way.
Yeah, I think I'd agree. My mom was definitely an act of service and words of affirmation. And I think that's generally the first way that I start to maybe experience or feel love. But I also, sometimes it feels situational and contextual for me. I feel like, to your point, Julie, I think I resonate with all of them, and it kind of depends on the situation and even my own current state. Like if I'm feeling overwhelmed and stressed, oh, definitely act of service. Please take care of me because I don't have the capacity to do it right now. Right. And so I think that if I had to say dominant, it's probably physical touch, acts of service. Yeah. And then words of affirmation, probably maybe a third, but contextual and depending on the situation for sure.
It depends on the person to whom you are showing love to, because if they I know people are really uncomfortable with words of affirmation sometimes, that they're like, no, they can't receive a compliment. You don't say those things to them because they can't handle it.
Yeah, I know
So,
people that have a problem with physical touch too. Like, I'm a big hugger.
oh,
So
yes.
my natural inclination, I mean, even if you're a friend, somebody I care about, I'm like, I want to give
Yeah.
them a hug. Some people are really not okay with that. So feeling that out too. But I completely respect their boundaries. But I feel like you kind of learn that in the first couple of encounters with somebody. Like, you'll know if you're they're not a hugger too.
Hmm. Oh my God, you guys, the first
That's true.
date I went on with my now husband, at the end of the night, because I'm a hugger too, I like jumped on him and gave him the biggest hug, and he was standing there going, oh my God, what's she doing? And he was so freaked out by that hug. And he's never been affectionate, ever, not in his whole life. And so that very first night, I was alerted. He was like freaked out. And I was comfortable with it because that's what my mom does. I give her a hug and she's like Scandinavian. So she's like, oh my God, you're touching me. It's so weird. It's so funny. But
That's so cute, Becky. I love hearing that.
well, we hug her anyways, whatever. So who cares if she doesn't like it?
Yeah. With one of my exes, I would run up to him and like jump on him like a koala. Like I would just like I didn't see him for a few days, like, whoa, I'd like pounce on him.
Oh,
Like, this is what
it's so
you're
cute.
That's funny.
Hmm.
I think I read that book a long time ago as well. And I think that Chapman gave a lot of people their first language for the fact that love can sort of be a hit or a miss, and that two people can be approaching love as hard as they know how to and still feel unloved and like the connection isn't there. So I think that's real. And I think it was helpful for a lot of people, but I do think that it is too limited, that there is something kind of deeper in terms of calling people to relational presence, right? And just integrity in knowing one another, because I think 5 categories is just not perhaps sufficient for how different we all are and the different types of relationships and also life circumstances. And so I think the bigger question is, how does love actually sort of land? How do you know that your person is receiving the love that you are pouring out to them? And how does it reach them? And what if they're doing all of these things to try to love you and you still feel like you're unloved because of your own framing, right? So, and that can be your mental framework, it can be how you were raised, it can be so many different things. And so to find a place in communication and relational integrity of understanding how two people or even more than two people, a family per se, for example, how we can feel validated and affirmed that the other person is receiving what we are offering. And I think that there's sort of a bridge somewhere that needs to be spoken about. And I think that's honestly, it's about presence and integrity and keeping communication lines open, because so many of us don't fit in one box. And if we train somebody in a relationship, like this is the way we receive, and we've grown and we've changed and we actually shift, how do we recalibrate that? And that's about ongoing, I think, touch points.
You brought up
You
so
know-
many points there. I know we all have something to say. There are like 5 things that we need to talk about based on what you just said, Reese. That was good.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
how about this? Let's start with this. You said something, Reese, about there aren't just 5 categories. And at the beginning I said there need to be more. And
Yes.
one of the things that I'm noticing that's been coming up for me is this idea of people providing for one another, like providers, like husbands providing for wives, sometimes wives providing for wives, whatever it is, people providing for people. I have a cousin who is married to a guy, and he is like beside himself happy because he's able to provide for his husband, who then gets to be an actor in like community theater. And he feels so loved and so loving and so happy because he's able to help his partner do the thing he wants to do the most. And I think about this idea of providing, and it's way beyond acts of service. It feels like it just needs to be a category of its own. The other one I was thinking is food. Providing food is more again than acts of service, because when you're making a big meal for people, You're just pouring your love into that meal. And that is then received by the people loving eating the meal. So those are the two things I thought of that would be a beautiful addition to it, because it goes beyond 5 categories. What about you guys? What do you think about what else could be listed?
The things that are coming to my mind, I feel like actually would fit into maybe quality time or physical touch in some way. So for me, I'm very spiritual. And so maybe depending on who your partner is, maybe they are, maybe they're not, but that's important to me. I like my own like little ritual time, right? But it's nice to be able to like have some kind of mutual agreement or understanding about that. So I was exploring over the last year like tantra. I guess that could be considered quality time and may or may not include physical touch. So some of those things were coming to my mind, but I feel like they would fit into those categories, even if it is like a little bit of a spiritual practice. I did have a question though, what Reese was talking about before, when you were relational integrity and presence. How would all of you think that we can maintain that or work toward that in 2026? And what I mean by that is because I feel like our day-to-day attention is so deviated and fractionalized that it can be a real challenge, because as somebody who's, fairly newer to like dating again, and also apologies if I am at some point dating somebody when this podcast comes out. Please don't hate me for saying that. Throwing that out there too.
Good point.
So don't know when this podcast is coming out, but how do you maintain relational integrity and presence when our attention span is so fractionalized, and in a sense of dating where it's like this person I'm interested in and this person I could be interested in. I'm not necessarily referring to myself, a little bit, I'll admit, but also people I'm also dating or interested in. I've noticed that there's just so much going on. So how can you actually get to a point of love when that is happening and bring yourself back to presence and allow love to develop? I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. Personally, I think it's about having love for yourself and having an internal congruence within so that you know what is really wanted, which then helps ensure discernment is there when you are dating multiple people, and being honest and clear about, the discovery phase. Like, I'm dating, I'm not necessarily making decisions, become monogamous yet, right? Because I'm exploring, I'm getting to know different people. Just that keeping things honest in that phase, I think, is important. But if we begin with really that relationship with ourselves, we're much more likely to be able to navigate even a noisy period of life, right? When everything external is kind of distorted and noisy or distracting. If we have kind of an inner groundedness, I think it's much easier to navigate that external pressure.
Thank you.
I was going to say, I don't know if y'all got a chance to look at the article that I sent in our group chat, but it's about being the slowest person in the room. And so the premise of it is kind of like not even simply slowing down, but taking on being slow as almost like a mantra, as a way of living. And I think one of the things that's interesting about that is because when you do slow down, I think this is to the piece that Reese was talking about, that relationship with self, you then begin to notice like what's external versus internal. And I think that's where your taste, your preferences start to surface without competition from like external noise. And I think that the reason why the article has resonated so deeply with me is because I realized I've been trying to conform to the pace of the external world, and that just simply does not work for me. I think relationally and moving slow doesn't allow those connections to be made. So another element of this is like I've been trying to refine and become more intentional with my own taste. And I guess taste is maybe another word for preferences, but like asking, why do you like what you like? And I think that's also, it's especially interesting for dating. Like, okay, like when you're spending time with someone, like what feels good about it and what doesn't feel good about it. And I think that is adjacent to the love language, but I think it comes down back to feeling, like observing and bringing the felt sense of like, okay, do I get butterflies? Do I feel calm? Does this person soothe my energy, or do I feel a little bit anxious and nervous? And is that because of me, or is that because of this person? I think it really is like slowing down and coming back to the present that helps us to notice what we like and then ask, why do we like what we like?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you were talking about external versus internal, my mind kind of went to external being possibly other people's opinions of your chosen partner versus internal feelings and how you really genuinely feel in that relationship, right? And I had been reading something about our nervous system and relationships, and yes, you should pay attention to how you feel and respond in a relationship and their energy and their presence. But there's also something I read was like somebody may feel familiar that may not be the best partner for you because your nervous system is accustomed to, let's say, a chaotic environment or a certain blueprint, right? And I was like, oh, wow. So that was something interesting that I read. I don't know if has anyone else read something about that with your nervous system and picking partners, and to also assess those feelings when you're in that partnership, if that's actually what's happening versus the old pattern, and how to recognize that.
I recognize it with friendships. I'm an empath. And so when I'm with a narcissist, it's really energizing for me for a while. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm really comfortable here because I've had so many friends that are narcissists until I can't take it anymore. And then I just have to stop. But it's familiar. And I know I'm good in that situation. So that's a really interesting thing you brought up, Julie, because that's a thing. I think a person does need to look at that and think, has this served me well before? Or is this a pattern I've been in before that wasn't good for me? Oof.
And I think that's where the subtlety comes in. And again, I think bringing that point back to what Reese was saying and really understanding and knowing self, because I think comfort is different than like present and calm. I think once one does the internal stuff to really know how we respond to things, you can distinguish comfort from just feel at peace and I feel present with this person, you know?
You know, one other thing you mentioned when you were talking, Reese, that came to me is this idea of years ago, it was probably 8 years ago at this point, I felt totally unloved. I mean, I was in a really bad place. I felt totally unloved. And yet I could look around me and I could see my kids, my parents, my friends, all these people giving me love, showing me love in some way. And I was not receiving any of it. And I read a book called The Go-Giver. I can't remember the guy's name who wrote that, but it was called The Go-Giver. And in it, it talked about there's no real giving unless there's an equal receiving. Like if you give a compliment, someone has to receive the compliment or it goes nowhere and it is mute. There's nothing that happens. It's like if you give a gift and somebody refuses that gift. I was doing that. You know, like if you want to do an act of service for somebody and they're like, no, I'm good. I don't need your help. This is what was happening to me. I think people were trying to help me and trying to be there for me and trying to show me love. And I just kept saying, oh no, I'm good. I got everything I need. I don't need you. I don't need help. And yet I was just completely empty and so sad. And I thought, my God, what is going on? I'm so sad. And then I shifted because I read that book and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm missing this whole part. I was taught to be a giver. And I didn't realize that there has to be a receiver. I have to be a receiver as much as I'm a giver. It does not work. It doesn't work. So I think that's important. Like if you're not receiving the love somebody's giving, it's easy to not. Like we can, we can resist affection. We can deny a person's time. And if we're not engaging in the way they're communicating love, then that's a problem. We're not going to feel it. I didn't feel it for a long time until I realized that I was just not doing it right.
I wonder sometimes if it's more about less about these categories and more about attunement, like coming into a place where the note that you are singing can be received by the other and the note that they're singing you can receive, right? Just kind of tuning to one another and having the conversations that need to be had so that that understanding is there. I just think there are many different ways to arrive at right relationship, and it doesn't necessarily mean being in a category. But to your point, Becky, mutuality, reciprocity, the giving and receiving, that exchange is what I think creates strength in the third entity in a relationship, which is the field between two people, that relational field, right? So we can be in relationship and have a field that does not fortify because we're not understanding, we're not connecting, whatever. But when the field between us is strong, it strengthens, it helps bring us back to center, it brings us back into the partnership or the friendship or whatever type of relationship it is. And so there's something to be said about it. Sort of look at it as this harmonic triad, like there's this point and that point, and then there's what is created, right? And what's created is the relational field. And that place has to also be strong in order for advancement to happen within any kind of relationship.
I really like what you're saying about that, because I think it also allows for two things to be true. It allows for the person that's maybe not super open to receiving love, but also for the person is maybe not necessarily giving love, even if the person was open to the way that they needed to receive it. I think like that notion of there being a bridge allows for the duality that is like a part of relationships, a part of existence, of like two things can be true, but how do we bridge the gaps between those two truths?
Right. Right. And that allows for an honoring of differences, because I think that's where love languages came from, was that people are different and they receive differently, they give differently, right? But if instead of categorizing, we think, okay, how do we fortify the bridge, right? We fortify it with presence, we fortify it by ourselves, being grounded, having interior congruence, and by speaking when we can't, right? By being able to say into the other, like, I am just not at capacity, like, I need help with this, or I need space, or I need whatever, but being able to voice that, right? And I think that's just about integrity and presence. And that begins here at home. Like, if I am not present enough to recognize, right, that I'm not receiving, or that I'm not whatever, hopefully the other and the field between us is strong enough to say, hey, I've noticed that this is going on, right? Because sometimes we need that.
Okay, so I'm loving this. And like peeling back the layers a little bit, like what's necessary and needed to facilitate that link? Some things that come to my mind is like safety, vulnerability, right? Like the assumption of positive intent, even when, all right, that wasn't your intention, but your action hurt me. But the assuming of positive intent, right?
Yes.
Opens up the space to have conversation and then eventually, hopefully, reach repair. What I'm saying is that there are definitely things that we can do to cultivate the conditions that are necessary for that congruency, that right relationship, that bridge.
Yes.
Like, what would be some of those? And this is important to me because when I travel, I'm in this expansive mode and I come back and my energy feels like it's going inside the genie bottle and I'm reconnecting with my husband and we're at a completely different vibrational level and we have to come back together. We have to come back together and become attuned again. And how would we do that? Like, what would be ways we could bring ourselves into attunement with our partner? I think about this when somebody has a really stressful job and they come home and they're still activated by their job. There are times where you're coming in and you're not even in a good resonance, or you're just in a different resonance because you've been in different places. How do we do that? Like, how would we bring ourselves back into a vibrational match
I feel
or
like
attunement?
sometimes men, especially, not to be gender specific, but when a partner comes home from work and they're frazzled, sometimes people just need a few minutes to decompress and let them be, instead of being like, it's nice when it's like the golden retriever energy, right? Like, oh, you're home, da da da, and then I want to know about your day, what happened, like tell me about it. It's very like divine feminine, right? And then some people just need time to decompress, like go do something else. Maybe it's an activity, maybe just go read something, have your time to yourself to get readjusted in your actual home, because that has its own frequency too, right? So as soon as you're going from one area or one frequency, like let's say it's work, to another, you're shifting your vibration again, and then you're coming into another frequency, so it's adding more. So I would say, if you're asking my opinion, would be just to allow some time, like as a house rule, when anyone comes back from a stressful day of work, 15 minutes, decompress, no questions asked. And if you need more time, just like, I need more time, and then be able to like talk about it after. But going back to what I was saying about tantra, it's really nice to be able to have no phone with you at all, not even in your pocket, not face up on the table. If it's around you, face down, so you have my full attention, because that kind of drives me crazy too. So being able to have your partner's full attention, not with the TV on in the background, any kind of distractions, just really unplug so you can be really focused on your partner. And then I like a lot of eye contact too, because it makes me feel not just seeing, you're hopefully hearing everything I have to say and it's registering in here. So being able to face each other forward, across from each other, I think is important, where you're opening your energy up to each other by facing each other and looking at each other in the eyes. I think that really helps. So it helps open your receptivity to really being able to be present and actually hearing what that person is communicating to you.
I like that.
I did too.
I like that.
Does anyone else have any like practices that way?
I don't personally, I should, but I can say that one of the things that spirit will offer a lot is that some people might find it beneficial to bring some of the practices that they learn at work into partnership, like strategic planning or kind of setting, boundary setting. Because a lot of times when people are unable to be present for one another, that can lead to just emotions, kind of flaring and disagreements and arguments and whatnot. And if there's a standing sort of weekly check-in, like this is what's going on in my work life, this is what's going on here, here's what I think my temperature might be over the next week, there can be a strengthening of the reverence and understanding and compassion that we bring. So perhaps even just having some specific rituals or strategies like agreements that I think a lot of times in partnerships, we don't bring in those types of practices that many of us are very skilled at in the work world, and we just leave at the door instead of actually translating them in order to help the most important relationships, the ones with our partners and our families and whatnot. And sometimes that kind of, where are we going? What's our vision together? That type of thing, along with just a weekly check-in, can be really useful and helpful and may even eliminate or at least bring it down the reactive, emotional, surging types of events that happen in relationships.
Yeah, I would implement more like a monthly check-in or like every 6 weeks. Yeah, I guess it depends on that person's vulnerability level at that time too. So maybe doing it more frequently so it doesn't feel like it's like this moment building up over like a 6-week period or 4-week period or whatever. Yeah, but I like that idea of bringing that structure and boundaries.
Anything else coming up for you ladies?
Well, one of the things I was thinking about is something that you said, Julia. It's like the whole taking a pause, taking a beat after someone who's come off a really charged work week and then coming back. And I think one of the other things that I think is relevant within that is understanding for myself and then also for maybe my partner, what state am I coming in at? Am I calm? Am I excited? Am I feeling whimsy? Am I charged? And I think that could also be a part of bridging, because if I know where you are and I've checked in with where I'm at least there's maybe some hope that we can maybe find each other in the middle or move towards each other.
Oh yeah, I thank you for sharing that, Christina.
Mm-hmm.
And also by you saying that, I remembered what I was going to say about the life path. So that's what you were talking about before, Reese, is like having shared goals. And I guess it's like at what point, when is it appropriate or maybe not appropriate? How soon in your process is it appropriate to discuss things like that? Because maybe you don't want to do it on the first date. Like just get it all away. Just like hash it all out. Like, hey, maybe this is not gonna work. But yeah, I'm not gonna say his name, but some guy that I do like him a lot. But the thing is, on maybe it was like our 3rd or 4th date, he's like, so how do you feel about kids? And I was like, well, I think I really would like the option to have a family someday. I'm not currently with the partner I can imagine myself having a child with. I'm not married. Like, I would like to be married. I mean, I didn't say all of that to him, but I was like, I would like the option, And then he's like, I'm 75% sure I don't want kids. And that kind of, like, honestly really disappointed me. Like, we're on this fun date. But you know what? I appreciated his honesty about it, at least. Because that actually shifted my mindset of my level of, I guess, investment, even if it's subconscious with him. And then he's like, I've broken up with people in the past over it. So I was like, ooh, okay. He's, like, pretty firm. It sounds like he's pretty firm on
That's huge.
And I was like, oh, like, honestly, it's still such a bummer because he's a really nice guy, but it's just like, it's good to get it out, I think, sooner than later. But like, what would you suggest about discussing shared goals and what's appropriate, what's maybe not?
I think it's kind of fun to have those conversations. I mean, why not? Why would that be like an off limits thing? Maybe it depends on, of course it depends on why you're sharing those. It might be like, let's just say it's the beginning of the new year, the beginning of the year, and you've just done your goals. Like you might do your goals and you might be on a date saying, oh my gosh, I just did my goals. These are the things I'm hoping to do this year. So what about you? I don't know if there's a perfect time to do it or an appropriate time, but as part of a fun conversation to get to know somebody, I think it is good Boy, especially if it's about kids, because you get to a certain age and that's a thing you got to think about, you know, and you
Right.
don't want somebody who's like, yeah, I really want to get married and have kids right now. That would freak somebody out, unless it wouldn't. Unless somebody's like, oh my God, me too.
And
Right.
I honestly, I appreciate him asking you the question because, like,
Mhm.
while he didn't say like this is a deal breaker, he said he's 75, and so if you like that allowed you to make the decision around your level of investment, like with him moving forward,
Yeah.
even if it does turn out that that's the love of your life, and like
Mhm.
all right, that's something that happens. Like you get to like, choose,
Yeah.
and you get to be empowered in your level of energy and entanglement. Like I think that like
Exactly.
actually
Yeah.
kind of dope and mature of
Thank
him
you.
to be like, yeah, both of y'all to have that conversation, because it's like that's what leads to, again, intimacy, safety, and just giving people the information they need to know to make decisions to bring their full selves.
Hmm. Yeah, I do find it interesting though too, because like a few more dates after that, we got into the topic again, but like it was around children, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm not ready for them right now." So I was like, "Oh, because like a couple weeks ago, you said you're 5% sure." So I don't know if,
I think
again,
that's
maybe
still a very
us
relevant data
to hang
point.
out with
It's
me a
because
couple more times, though maybe that's a
and
possibility.
it to me it communicates it's not a hard no, but like right now from where I stand, it's mostly like I'm okay if that's not an option, right? And you
Yeah,
might be like, no, I'm 75% sure I do want kids. That
yeah.
doesn't, I feel like it allows you to still navigate how the exchange and experiences are happening, but have information that you need to know around making decisions around how
Hmm.
y'all connect.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly.
I think that's like one some of the aspects of like transparency is some of the things that's like kind of currently missing from the relationship aspect. And so I think sometimes our fear of rejection or whatever it may be, but it does really get in the way of intimacy and deep and meaningful connection. And I say intimacy not just in romantic relationships, but friendships, platonic.
I've met with a lot of people who, thought they were on the same page regarding children, and it changes later. So we are
Hmm.
always changing. Every experience shapes us in some way. And it's good they didn't say 100% because that probably wouldn't be true, right? And a lot of times that gap between 75 and 100 is, well, I haven't met you yet, when I shaped
Oh, yeah.
this. But now if I meet somebody who I could actually see myself having a family with, it could really change things. And so I think transparency, even as you grow in relationship, as you recognize changes within yourself, being able to bring that forward can really help strengthen that relational field.
Absolutely. I was just thinking about, we've been talking about, our topic today are the love languages and, fostering these positive relationships. So I think it would be interesting to maybe discuss what are some red flags, not just in romantic partnership, but maybe platonic friendships, just being in relationship with people in general. Like, what are some red flags?
The first one I think I'll probably say is self-awareness. Like if you're not really self like aware of yourself, then you couldn't possibly be aware of maybe what would be needed to keep our relational field within, good standing. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
self-awareness.
Mm-hmm. I like that one a lot.
Negativity for me is a big one because negative frequencies, negative energy really can affect my field a lot. And so if somebody is like frames things a certain way that is contrary to just the way you move through life, that could be a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. I
How about you,
notice
Becky?
when somebody uses victim wording, that's an alert to me because I that's it's a habit and a way a person is that's hard to break if you are like always victim of something, like always the
Mm-hmm.
victim. I also find to me that it's so important in my relationships that there's a balance in the exchange and the conversation. And so when I'm with somebody, I can listen for hours, but if they don't ever respond and ask me something to balance the conversation out, I have to avoid those people because
Mm-hmm.
it's not okay. And they're around me, and I have to just be really careful in how much time I give those people who essentially just need to time to proclaim their wonder and goodness. I'm like, I'm done. I don't need that. It needs to be an exchange. So, like, a really balanced conversation is so important for me in a relationship. Girlfriends, boyfriends, family members, all of it. It's one of the most important things to me that there's a balance. And what it feels like when that happens is kind of a beautiful dance of energy. When you're having a good conversation and you say something and someone else says something, kind of like our conversations, they feel like a dance of energy that are invigorating. And if one of us was just talking the whole time and the rest of us had to listen the whole time, it just wouldn't be invigorating. It would be like soul sucking. And so that's a really big thing in relationships to me. Both those things, victimization and the concept of kind of balanced conversation, give and take in a conversation.
Yeah, I was going to say something along the lines of reciprocity in whatever way that wants to take place, like whether it be conversation or acts of service, right? So with that said, kind of pivoting into like, what would you say are your top green flags in relationships? So like, I guess kind of like adding to that.
Well, I would say just exactly that. When I feel like I'm with somebody and our energies just dances together because of the conversation just goes back and forth. And I don't know, there's just a swirling of energy, like a swirling up of energy. And I leave thinking, oh my gosh, that was so fun. That to me is a green flag.
I was thinking something similar, like this somatic experience. Like, how does my body feel? How is my biofield? Like, does it feel good here? Right? Like, does it feel like I would like to have more time with this person or experience more of them? Right? That piece of just feeling, I think, vibrancy with another human being. Like there's a resonance. And I also like being invited into intellectual or philosophical discourse, but that's me. So for me, if somebody can go there with me, that's awesome.
Love that too so much.
Same. Me too.
Oh my
I
gosh.
think, in fact, that's probably my love language.
I'm a self-proclaimed nerd too, so I appreciate when people have conversations that aren't just surface level, and we can really talk about real topics and have a conversation around it. Yeah, I love that too.
I also like, and usually you don't know this like the first time you meet them, but I actually like when people can call me out on something, because I've spent a lot of my life just because of the psychic abilities where people like to ask me a lot of questions, but never really get to know me, if that makes sense. And so, that if somebody is questioning something or pushing back on something or calling you out on something, that they're actually paying attention. And so that, for some reason, is something that I actually really enjoy. I also like debating. So that's about my weird wiring. But I think that all comes to presence, right? Like, are they present with me enough to witness me, enough to notice me witnessing them, right?
Not to mention somebody trusts you if they're willing to push back.
Yeah.
They trust that you're going to be in it with them. Yeah. Or they trust themselves. And I don't know, there's an element of trust in that, which I really appreciate too. Pushing back. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What about you, Julie? What are your green flags?
Well, one of them I noted before was the feeling of reciprocity, either in communication or quality time. I'm a really big communicator. I really appreciate somebody who is able to have clear communication and then take action on it. So kind of going back to my original acts of service, I think the green flags is like what Becky was saying also about the dance and flow of energy. Like I think about some people that I work with, like all of you being one, some of my other like clients that I work with, I feel so good after leaving a shoot with them. I feel happy, I feel energized, and just being with them makes the time go by so fast. And I think about some of my closest friends that can be like that also. So I do pay attention to something like that. Another green flag I look for, and this I think kind of comes later down the road, is if you're navigating through a challenge or you're navigating something that's really positive and observing how those people around you react, whether it's also something supportive and positive or if it's not. And so the green flag for me is how others choose to show up and be equally supportive and like your cheerleader, because that's how I feel I show up for people. And so I would say that's another green flag for me.
I love that we started with love languages and have ended up here going into a deeper realm of talking about presence and things that really speak to the integrity of someone contributing, right? As you are that whole giving and receiving, that reciprocal exchange, those are all really important things. And I think when we're talking about relationship, which really at the end of the day is the thing that gives the most to life. You know, people are not at the end of their lives thinking, I really, you know, wish I would have gotten that job 50 years ago. They are looking at their relationships.
Yeah.
And so I don't think that we can effectively put them in boxes or labels, because we as individuals are so different, and that distinction is important, right? Like there's something so beautiful about connecting with different ways of looking at life, different backgrounds, all of these things. And, you know, sameness is kind of boring, you know? So being in relational integrity, talking about presence, talking about how there is this additional field that is created and can be fortified, I think that's a really meaningful thing. And it's a topic that hopefully people will be wanting to weigh in on even, and perhaps give us some inspiration for future topics.
I mean, and it does feel like it's the precipice of everything. Like we're in relationship with everything, with the land, with each other, you know? So understanding what it takes to nourish, build, and sustain relationships is not simply just a romantic or familial thing. It's a way of life. It's a way of like how we engage with everything around us.
I asked my AI chat friend to act as a relationship expert and to give its opinion on the 5 love languages and if it feels like there's a missing category. So I thought it'd be interesting to see what it would offer as its opinion. And it said, what's missing? Emotional attunement. In this category, chat says it would add first. Emotional attunement means feeling understood, feeling seen, feeling emotionally gotten, having a partner who notices shifts in your mood and responds appropriately. Then it says reliability and trust, and so that's something that Becky, you touched upon before. Another huge omission. It says they feel loved when someone keeps their promises, shows up consistently, is dependable. Emotional safety. So tying back to number 1, shared growth, something that Reese, I believe, touched upon. So they're about building a life together, supporting each other's dreams, growing together. And then also we all talked about respect. So respect includes sharing the conflict, honoring boundaries, valuing opinions, not belittling or controlling. So yeah, I love all of these. Oh, it says one more category, playfulness. That's
Yes,
Like
I think that's
how
important.
it is.
did we not do that? It says many successful couples maintain inside jokes, curiosity, love that, flirting, yes, laughter and adventure. It says relationships often don't die from lack of love, they die from lack of a life.
That is so true. That's so true.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Yes, incorporating play is so important.
Yeah.
You know, the idea of relationships most often don't die because of lack of love. It's almost always, it seems like it's always something else. I mean, not always, but there's a huge percentage of relationships that die because of alcoholism or people just having not the same goals or some other reason besides love. You can totally love somebody and be like, yeah, this is not working for me. I cannot stay in this relationship, you know? And that's interesting because you can still love them and love them the rest of their life, but be like, I cannot be in this relationship. It's not good for me. That's interesting.
Oh yeah, I can relate to that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or like being together and then taking time apart, coming back together, back and forth and back and forth. And it's like, how many times am I gonna do this?
Mm-hmm.
So thank you everybody for your insight. We would love to hear from you, whoever is listening or watching this podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope to tune in with you next time on the Harmonic Spark. So leave it in the comments if you have any questions, or if you'd like to add to the 5 love languages categories. If you feel like there's one that we didn't discuss that you feel is missing that you'd like to add, let us know. We'll see you next time.